All right. After all is said and done, we are starting on time today. Welcome back to Blackburn News, where everything is connected. How y'all doing? Thanks for joining me on the internets, on the daily. We're live on YouTube, Rockfin, Callin, and on Twitter. And it's good to see you all on all of these locales. I appreciate y'all. What are we talking about here? Talking about Joe Biden and his lack of support, growing lack of support. It seems that the people in charge of the military industrial complex have a blank check, and they are cashing it while they can. While Joe Biden is in office, and there are no hands on the controls, nobody's steering the ship, and not just to leave Joe Biden by himself, but it seems like quite a bit of Congress and the Senate, including Bernie Sanders, are also not helping to steer the ship in a proper direction. Pardon me. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be. There is some, a bit, not none, but seems to be mostly unanimous support for ramping things up in the Middle East. And if you don't support it, I don't know, then maybe we'll have to come down on you in some way, shape, or form. Man, sorry. I was going to cover something earlier this week, and I don't know where this post went, but apparently there was an MP that was relieved of his post in England, in Parliament, for speaking out on what was going on in Gaza. If you don't go along with us, fellow parliamentarian or congressman, woman, well, you might just get sacked or censured. But there's just seems to be an absolute dereliction of duty and a free-for-all as far as going to war, military spending, and people's personal lives are falling apart because they can't make ends meet, and the economy seems to be crumbling, and all that good stuff. This is from Paul Beckwith, who's been doing a pretty fair job. I'm really enjoying Paul Beckwith's posts lately. His political posts. Of course, we know Paul Beckwith from covering climate change, but his political posts seem to be. I'm pretty aligned with him, and I don't know if I'm surprised, but I'm happy to see this from Paul Beckwith, because one of the other climate change aware people that used to tackle political subjects and in a way that was not completely blindly aligned with liberal propaganda was Jim Bendell, and he's not on Twitter anymore. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, but of all people to be kicked off Twitter, Jim Bendell just doesn't. That one is a head scratcher for me. Still a head scratcher. Anyways, Joe Biden has completely destroyed his legacy by being a cheerleader for Israel instead of being a compassionate, powerful, moral leader. He's finished as a politician and needs to step aside for somebody else up to the task. And he's out of here. He's not going to make it. I think it is absolute political suicide, or maybe it's everybody. It's also a common belief that the Democrats willingly do this kind of stuff. Maybe they want to lose so badly, get spanked so badly. I don't know. I can't see why. But if they keep standing Joe up for a re-election, it is going to be he's going to be obliterated, absolutely obliterated, and the Democratic Party will be obliterated because of it, because it's so bad. It is so bad. And unfortunately, it's looking pretty good for Trump at this point, because I don't see anybody, do I want to believe in RFK Jr.? I think he's better than Biden. He's actually way better than Biden. RFK Jr. is way better than Biden. I don't know what he's done to his campaign as far as his stance on Israel is a weird one. So that actually doesn't bode well for his campaign. And I don't see anybody else. There's talk of Gavin Newsom flying in from the rafters and saving the Democratic Party. I don't see that one either. I just don't see it. He's too corporate. He's too mired in liberal propaganda. He's not as popular as people think he is. People really have a great disdain and loathing for Gavin Newsom, just like Kamala Harris and just like Hillary Clinton. People loathe Gavin Newsom, loathe him. So I don't. I kind of don't really see any other outcome other than Trump regaining the presidency. I don't see it unless somebody else comes up, on it. Unless somebody can come out of the shadows, out of the wings, and take the country by storm. And I don't know. Could it be RFK? I don't know. RFK actually has getting some very strong backing, and I'm going to play you something about that shortly. Anyways, let's look at this real quick. This is from Apple News. I'm bringing you the mainstream news sources. Can you guys just open this thing? Jeez. Really? Hold on one second. Let's see if I can get this. Somehow, some way, somewhere else. I don't know. This is annoying. Can you open it up? Thank you so much. Oh my God, that wasn't that hard. Nope. All right, let's try it over here. Okay, there we go. From Axios, Scoop, Biden's 2020, no thank you, 2024 team roiled by the Israel-Hamas war. Part of President Biden's political team is in turmoil over the Israel-Hamas war, as some aides see the White House as abetting an immoral attack on Palestinians, while others believe Biden is showing moral clarity and protecting Israel from terrorists. Why it matters, the strife within The Democratic National Committee, which Biden is leaning on for his re-election campaign, reflects larger generational and political divisions among Democrats. Those divisions are chiefly between older pro-Israel Democrats and younger progressives who are more sympathetic to the plight of Palestinians. Those divisions, their differences have been exposed by the war in Gaza that began October 7th after Hamas' surprise attack on Israel killed 1,400 people. Israel's counterattacks in Gaza have killed more than 9,000 people. The Palestinian Ministry of Health claims, I guess you gotta triple the people you take down in order to make it fair, or something like that. Zoom in. Some staffers at DNC feel despondent about the scale and death toll from Israel's response, and one staffer says they are considering resigning, citing Biden's resolute support for Israel. Josh Paul, we've covered this extensively, has already resigned. Ranking a State Department member, a high-ranking DNC official who asked not to be identified, told Axios, the president centered his 2020 campaign on a battle for the soul of the nation, but it seems as though the administration is currently in a battle for its own soul. I don't know how you can see supporting the large-scale killing of Palestinian civilians as anything but immoral, the official added. DNC Chair Jamie Harrison told Axios in a statement that Biden continues to display unparalleled leadership and moral clarity, and that Israel has a right to defend itself from terrorism and the continued threat posed by Hamas. Harrison noted that Biden, who has called for a humanitarian pause in the fighting in Gaza, but not a ceasefire. We'd like a pause. No, it's not a ceasefire, it's a pause. Where they got whole teams of people thinking up these words, right? Anyways, has been a strong advocate for both humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza as well as protecting civilian lives. Some DNC staffers say they've been rattled by emails and phone calls from Democratic grassroots donors angry about the administration's policy, according to a person familiar with the matter. The DNC declined to comment on any discontent among staffer supporters and donors. The 2024 cycle promises to be a long, grueling campaign and the most important election ever, of course, always. And the president is making it even harder, the high-ranking DNC official said. On Friday, 51 DNC staffers, about 17% of the DNC's roughly 300 employees, signed a letter to DNC leaders saying that we feel it is the DNC's moral obligation to urge President Biden to publicly call for a ceasefire. The Huffington Post first reported, wow. The staffers also wrote that they were shocked and heartbroken by the unfathomable loss of life and the brutal attack on Israeli civilians, and were grieving for the thousands of Palestinian civilians who have lost their lives during the Israeli government's military response. Zoom out. The internal conflicts of the DNC are also playing out among Democrats in Congress and their staffs. Former staffers for presidential campaigns of Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have penned letters urging the senators to call for a ceasefire. These two senators are like, yay, go war. Warren called two of the organizers of the effort to hear them out, a person familiar with the matter told Axios. Sanders' communications director did not respond. Several House Democrats told Axios they expect more of their colleagues to begin speaking out about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. It's going to be very, very hard for Democrats, given what we're seeing on cable news about what's happening in Gaza, to just turn a blind eye, said one lawmaker, a supporter of Israel. As I said, the Democrats are going down. They're going down in this election. They're going down, and all of and not just Biden, but all of the Democrats will lose in a massive wave. And unfortunately, they're going to lose to Trump. I wish it weren't so. I wish it were someone else. I wish it was an independent voice, a different voice. But it's probably going to be Trump. Trump leads in 5 of the 6 most important battleground states as voters blast Biden. New York Times Siena poll finds. So here's Trump up by as much as 11 in Nevada. Still losing in Wisconsin, but up, 4, 5, 6, 7 points in most of these states. Sorry, I thought that was a link. The Dems are not looking good. Here is a on the ground quick take for a woman who voted for Biden from Professor Zenkis. My message to President Biden is I voted for you and I regret it.
And I regret it. My message to President Biden is I voted for you and I regret it.
Will you vote for him in 2024?
Absolutely not. My message.
Opening the door. I mean, I'm sorry, you couldn't see that. You want to hear it again? I don't know.
To President Biden is I voted for you and I regret it.
Will you vote for him in 2024?
Absolutely not. My message to President Biden is I voted for you.
Right. Leaving the door open, it's not just, somebody could step in here and take this. Because I really don't feel like Trump is all that strong either, but he seems to be the biggest name on the block and he was already president. But, I feel like someone with the right message and the right, I don't know what, team, chutzpah, all the things. Somebody who could put it together could actually take this thing. But it's probably going to just, be the typical quagmire that these general elections tend to be. And I'm going to wrap up this segment here with this, because this is pretty, to me, this is encouraging. To other people who might not, maybe don't understand the topic thoroughly, this is Bill Ackman.
Broader array of choices on both.
This is Bill Ackman speaking on RFK Jr. Bill Ackman is a billionaire hedge fund manager who apparently has already given to the RFK Jr. campaign. But what he has to say, he is, I guess, by the sound of it, formerly a COVID vaccine believer and taker, a believer of all things, of COVID propaganda. So, I'm feeling like I'm walking in a dangerous territory here, but I don't think so. The way he puts it is, and this is from CNBC, by the way. So I'm just playing something from CNBC. Listen to what Bill Ackman has to say about RFK Jr. and about the data in general. And it's, well, I think he's right, and is also encouraging that somebody with so much sway can weigh in this way on the subject. Anyway.
Sides of the aisle here. Yes.
You tweeted,
which is why I've been supportive of multiple people.
well, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yes.
Are you supporting him?
I'm certainly, I like that his voice is in the race, for sure. And meeting him for the first time actually tomorrow.
Have you given him any money yet?
I've written him a check, yes.
So I think some would look at that and say, how could somebody who was so emotional about COVID, you came on my program, we all remember that, as committed as you were to the vaccine and getting as many people vaccinated as possible, given his stance on vaccines in general, some might wonder how you can be supportive.
So actually, I think Kennedy raises a lot of important questions that need to be asked and answered about vaccines. And that's something that we are doing a deep dive on. Just today, I was on the phone with a scientist, and we want to put together what I think needs to be done is a very detailed deep dive into all of the research on vaccines, on vaccine safety, and then among the things we have not done a lot of work on is the cumulative impact on a child, for example, of, when I was a child, I got 3 shots. And I have a 4-year-old, the schedule is to get 73 shots. And it may not be the virus, if you will, that it's designed to make you immune to a particular disease, or the dead virus, or the mRNA technology. It may be aluminum or some of the other preservatives that are used in vaccines, which create risks and challenges. And by the way, as a parent of a 4-year-old, where the 4-year-old has no ability to consent to your injecting something into them, I feel a moral and other paternal obligation to get to the bottom of this issue. I think, Mike, I just spoke to a scientist today, top scientist at UCSF, who said to me, Kennedy is right on 75 to 80% of the stuff he says about vaccines. The unfortunate thing is there's a 20 to 25% where unfortunately there's just not enough data for the stuff he says.
Listen to that. That's very important. He didn't say on 20% he's wrong. He said on 20% there's not enough data. That's not saying he's wrong. That's just saying that's interesting. That is really interesting.
Convincingly, and so I think it's time for us. This whole vaccine thing became a political issue, where if you got a shot and wore a mask, you were on one party. If you refused to get a shot and didn't wear a mask, you were another political party. It's just not a political issue, and there is real reason. Look, we have a generation of kids who have a lot more asthma, have a lot more eczema, have a lot more autism, and we don't yet understand the reason for that. And
Whoa! Wow! I mean, I I want you to understand how this is really some major stuff that's being acknowledged right here. Major stuff that's being acknowledged. That is, and this is, okay, so he's a billionaire hedge fund manager. What, you could say, what does he know about anything? But this is, these are influential voices. This is CNBC. This is CNBC. This is some acknowledgement of some major problems in mainstream media. This is big. This is pretty big. And I was, first time I listened to this, I was like, I was pretty in awe. But the second time I'm listening to it, my jaw is actually on the ground that he's saying this.
Is it the adjuvant in the vaccine? Is it something about vaccines? Is it some other toxins in the environment? I think we have an obligation as parents to figure this out before before we could keep.
Is that where this newfound curiosity came from you becoming a parent?
No, from actually listening to what Kennedy had to say, as opposed to, look, the biggest, I would say, interesting, I'll give a lot of credit to Elon and Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. This, I was talking to, again, a scientist today who's a brilliant, epidemiologist, and among other issues. And he was one of the scientists / doctors that raised questions about our approach to the COVID vaccine. And he was demoted on Twitter, and some of the papers he put up on one of the preprint sites were taken down as misinformation. And you look at this guy, Jay Bhattacharya at Stanford, his recommendations for how we should have managed COVID turned out to be pretty much spot on accurate. But he was basically just taken off Twitter as misinformation. And now Twitter has become a place where people can express their views. And I'm a huge free speech advocate, and I use.
Except for Jem Bendell and other people, and Garland Nixon. Anyways, that's all I'm going to play of that. There's another minute of it. I'm just playing this. This is Bill Ackman on CNBC. I'm just playing this. I'm just for information's sake. Vaccines are safe and effective. Totally safe and effective, y'all. Totally safe and effective. But wow. 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 I'm fairly blown away by that. All right, let's move over to this. Let's move over to this. This is another post from Paul Beckwith. Kind of, again, talking about basically what we were talking about yesterday, which is that the division is not whether climate change is happening or not. The division is how bad is it? How bad is it going to get? How exponential are we going to get? And this is another, I guess, take on the same conversation from Clean Technica regarding James Hansen versus Michael Mann. Is global warming linear or exponential? James Hansen and his colleagues contend that global heating is accelerating. Michael Mann disagrees. One of them is right. James Hansen and Michael Mann are giants in the climate science community. Hansen is the former NASA scientist who had the temerity to tell the Senate Energy Committee in 1988 that was 99% certain the warming trend he and his fellow scientists had observed was not a natural variation, but was caused by a buildup of carbon dioxide and other artificial gases in the atmosphere. According to the New York Times, Hansen said in an interview after his testimony that there was no magic number that showed when the greenhouse effect was actually starting to cause changes in climate and weather, but added, "It is time to stop waffling so much and say that the evidence is pretty strong that the greenhouse effect is here." Sorry, I was getting tangled up. Michael Mann is also a highly regarded climate scientist and is the director of the Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media at the University of Pennsylvania. Mann has contributed to the scientific understanding of historic climate change based on the temperature record of the past 1,000 years. He and his colleagues introduced the now famous hockey stick graph that showed a steep rise in average global temperatures beginning with the advent of the Industrial Revolution. In research published on November 2nd, 2023 in the journal Oxford Open Climate Change James Hansen and his colleagues present the argument that the models and predictions offered by the International Panel on Climate Change are too conservative. In fact, Hansen's group say their research shows that there are factors already embedded in the Earth's atmospheric and aquatic environments which will lead to significant increases in average global temperatures in the near future, larger increases than IPCC forecasts. The study is long and extremely detailed. It examines the average temperature of the Earth over the past 66 million years, including a time when carbon dioxide levels were half what they are today and the Earth was on its way to becoming a frozen ball of ice. It identifies how natural perturbations like oscillations in the Earth's orbit and sunspot activity affect the Earth's climate. The upshot of all of this is that despite all those natural influences, the amount of what scientists called forcings attributable to human activities will lead to average global temperatures rising far higher and sooner than IPCC projections suggest. Below is the summary. Climate change is characterized by delayed response and amplifying feedbacks. Delayed response makes human-made climate forcing a threat to today's public and future generations because of the practical difficulty of reversing the forcing once consequences become apparent. Feedbacks determine climate sensitivity to any applied forcing. We find that Earth's climate is very sensitive, more sensitive than the best estimate of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which implies that there is a great amount of climate change in the pipeline. In the pipeline, right? Baked in the cake, as Guy McPherson would say. Extraordinary actions are needed to reduce the net human-made climate forcing, as is required to reduce global warming and avoid highly undesirable consequences for humanity and nature. We are damn fools, says James Hansen. We would be damn fools and bad scientists if we didn't expect an acceleration of global warming. Hansen told The Guardian, we are beginning to suffer the effect of our Faustian bargain. This is why the rate of global warming is accelerating. Hansen noted that there is an imbalance between the energy coming in from the sun versus the energy going out from the Earth, and it has notably increased. In fact, it has almost doubled over the past decade. That increase could result in a disastrous amount of sea level rise for the world's coastal cities. We've been talking about this for the last week, and I feel like I'm, going over the same information. We are in the early phase of a climate emergency, Hansen and his colleagues write. Such acceleration is dangerous in a climate system that is already far out of equilibrium. Reversing the trend is essential. We must cool the planet for the sake of preserving shorelines and saving the world's coastal cities. Is geoengineering the answer to deal with this crisis? Hansen and his colleagues advocate for a global carbon tax as well as spraying sulfur dioxide, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about all this. We went over this. Anyways, I feel like I'm rereading. These articles are just being reprinted in a bunch of places, and I'm rereading the same thing. The upshot is what's going on on planet Earth because of this. See if we can get these things to load. Powerful storm in Xanthi, Greece. Upended some cars, some cars. Oh, y'all could see that? No. Shocking scenes from Italy in the last couple days. It's hard to see these TikTok-y type videos. This is in Italy. Amazing footage. And this is from Saudi Arabia. I do apologize for the slowness. Cars being swept away. People in the cars being swept away. Very frightening. In Oman. One of these days, this is going to load, so you can see this. There you go. Well, it's hard to see, anyways. It's at night. It's very dark, but you can see that faintly the rushing of a massive torrent of water. All right. Meanwhile, there was a there's sound too. There's sound too. There was a big anti or pro-Palestinian rally in D.C. yesterday. That was pretty big, and they had it on cough cough Freedom Plaza. The names. That is huge. That's a massive rally. So huge it overflowed way beyond the space that they had set aside for it. Estimates are that 300,000 people were there. 300,000 is a lot of people. And this from Nico House. I guess this is where he said there were 300,000 people. That's an estimate. I don't know if that's a real number, but it sounds like a lot of people. He says, Nico House, we're taking on the empire's propaganda machine and we're winning. This is more proof of that. From Hotspot, reported that over 300,000 people were in attendance at the D.C. protests against Israel's assault on Gaza and the Palestinian people. Yeah, you know, it's kind of hard. The cat's out of the bag. People are feeling how they're feeling about this. And I can tell you that the feeling is not pro-Israel. That's mainly the feeling is not pro-Israel, even though they're trying to stuff that feeling down your throat. And then that protest went on to the White House, and people people wanted to take the message to the White House. Pro-Palestinian protesters are now climbing up on the White House fence as they throw objects at the Secret Service. Thousands of pro-Palestinian supporters have gathered at the White House after today's large march, or that's yesterday's, against U.S. support for Israel. The protesters have packed together, occupying dozens of streets and marching to multiple places around the D.C. area. Now everyone is gathered at the White House, where pro-Palestinian protesters are climbing up on the fence and shaking the northwest entrance fence. Reports of smashed windows at McDonald's next to the White House.
Fucking coward!
All right. People raising their voices. And lastly, this is an interesting video I've seen floating around. This is I'm going to wrap it up after this. From Jimmy Dore, reposting this from Ryan Dawson. This is footage of a let's see. It's an Israeli Mossad agent who he's an ISIS commander captured in Libya and revealed to be an Israeli Mossad agent.
ديانتك
Because ISIS is so real.
عملك
ملازم أول موساد
عملك
ملازم أول موساد
أمتى جندت في الموساد؟
سنة 2002 2001
أمتى دخلت إلى ليبيا؟
في عام 2012
الغرض
جاني وحود وغاني جاي جاني وحود وغاني جاي
هذا اسمك الحقيقي واسمك الحركي في ليبيا؟
محمد ياسر أبو علاء
محمد ياسر أبو علاء. جنسيتك؟
سورية.
ديانتك؟
يهودية.
عملك؟
ملازم أول موساد.
عملك؟
ملازم أول موساد.
All right. Anyways, Jimmy Dore says this is what the CIA and the Mossad do. They create and fund terrorist organizations and then use those terrorist organizations to justify never-ending wars of aggression in Libya, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Sudan, etc. Israel funds Hamas, for crying out loud. Turns out we are the world's terrorists. And we're doing a pretty good job of keeping that reputation up. All right. Thanks, y'all. I'm going to sign off now, and I will be back tomorrow at the regular time of 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight. Thanks for tuning in and not checking out. And Denver says it's 80 degrees in Chattanooga right now. Jeez. Yeah, that's in November. It's a little odd, don't you think? It's actually 80 degrees here, which is not necessarily odd, but it is November. It is November 5th. So it's more likely, I think, in Los Angeles for that to happen. But the fact that it happens like every single year now could be something to put in your viewfinder and think about. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Denver also says Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo customers hit with deposit delays after major glitch with payment processor. Huh. Maybe I'll have to bring this back tomorrow. Okay. Or let's look at it right now. Bank of America, Chase. Let's see. Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo customers, which is like everybody, right, in the U.S. Those are the only like 3 banks left. Are there any? I mean, I know people have other banks, but these are like the majors, right? The only majors left standing, and so it's like everybody's at one of these banks, right? I'm at one of these banks. Unfortunately, I should probably not be at one of these banks. Glitch occurred on a major payday for Americans, leaving many without their wages. 900,000 transactions are thought to have been reported so far. America's major banks have been hit by a deposit delay. What's the date on this? This is from today? No, November 3rd. So Friday. B of A, Chase, and Wells Fargo have all confirmed that some of their accounts were affected. Truist and U.S. Bank customers also complained of issues on Friday morning, according to the outage monitor site Down Detector. It came on the first Friday of the month, a major payday for most Americans. Huh. Okay. All right, guys. Just checking out. Oh, yeah, I forgot to do the whole, so if you want to support the show thing. So if you want to support the show, you can do so. buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews. My computer is moving real slow. That's kind of why I wanted to turn this off. Like real slow. Like real glitchy. You can't, geez. Okay, I'm going to have to get rid of this. Maybe that will help. There we go. buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews. Cash App at Red Llama Music. Venmo at Kevin Sandbloom. PayPal.me/Kevin Sandbloom. Zelle, Kevin Sandbloom at protonmail.com. Thank you all, everybody that supports the show. All the Patreon people, I appreciate you. And there's a few people that do a subscription type thing on PayPal and on Buy Me a Coffee. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you tomorrow. And until next time, peace.